So this is how I would do it using the suggested intro. Now, Kyshun, keep your eyes straight to the camera,
Okay.
square up. You're leaning too far forward. Let's not forget what we discussed.
Okay.
All right. You have a okay. Okay. Look at the camera. All right, here we go. This is Talk with Audrey. Welcome back. Dr. Kyshun Webster knows what it's like to suffer workplace fatigue. He was among the first wave of nonprofit executives who returned to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, committed to restoring normalcy to their city. And when he saw that his colleagues were dropping from the enormous pressures, a light bulb went off in his head. He realized that organizations and companies lack compassionate policies. He studied the issue for years, and in 2013, he founded a company to address conditions that contribute to stress on the job and also provide solutions. Joining me now, Dr. Kyshun Webster, the founder of Compassion Society Benefits. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Audrey.
Really appreciate you joining me, Dr. Webster, sorry, Weber. Well, your company has an interesting name. What's the story behind Compassion Society Benefits?
The name behind Compassion Society is really envisioning a society where people work, live, and play and can still express compassion without penalty. In New Orleans, we had these benevolent societies that we are very familiar with, and those societies help take care of their members and citizens in ways where they come together and pool resources in the time of family loss, etc. So Compassion Society has multiple meanings, but primarily I just envision a place where we live in a society where people can take care of one another. I know I bummed it, but go ahead.
No, hold on. No, so, okay.
Right.
So Karen, that is his answer. Do you want to critique it?
Yeah, I do. Emotion always works, and that lacked emotion. So if you were to rephrase that in a way that had the human spirit in it, what would you say? Compassion Society Benefits is about compassion. It's about us caring for each other, even from the corporate sector. Everybody caring about each other and then having policies that reflect that. So again, in journalism, and particularly in TV, and in this environment that we're in now, where TikTok and other things that are very short and really work with our attention span, we should fit your responses into that real world expectation that it's going to be short, it's going to have emotion, and it's going to resonate with you. So if you were to restate what you said in just a few words and make it have emotional impact. Audrey, re-ask the question, and then I want you to think. You don't have a lot of time to think, but just go for the emotion more than the correct answer. So Audrey, can you restate the question?
Absolutely. Kyshun, sit back in the chair, please. Thank you. All right. Dr. Webster, your company has an interesting name. What's the story behind Compassion Society Benefits?
So Compassion Benefits is about helping people connect with their emotions and being compassionate, working, living, and playing in a society that we can imagine where, I'm sorry.
And look at the camera while you're at
Okay,
it.
all right.
We're looking at the screen.
Okay.
This will get easier as we go along.
Okay.
Okay. And
You know what? Could you
you're really on the spot. So, but it's okay. We've all been there.
I hadn't had a lot of time to think about the name. There is, let me think. I didn't get a chance to look at the question starter that Karen created. Should I look at those, or do y'all just want to go cold turkey with it and talk through it? Because sometimes I guess if I'm able to reflect on the questions, I'm able to kind of be with it a little bit more. But we can go either way.
So
I can suffer through.
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with. But you also need to maybe rethink your audience. So right now, you're talking to um, kind of an academic audience. Think in your head, just see a picture of a person, or not even a picture. Act like you're talking to a real person, like it's your mother or a friend you haven't seen in a long time. What would you say to them about your company if they were to say, well, that's an interesting name. How'd you come up with that?
So you know what it sounds to me like? It sounds to me like he's going to really have to think through these questions, given the direction that you've given him. So maybe we should come back and
Okay.
do this again after he's had a chance to do that. What do
Well,
you think, Karen?
I mean, if that's what's comfortable for you, Kyshun, but you're not going to have that option, before every interview, and the questions aren't always going to be scripted. So,
Okay.
so
Well, just go. Well, go to the next one and give me a chance to think about how I want to respond to the other one.
but let me say something about what
Okay.
you said. You've already said it. You just could say it differently. But this is natural to your roots. You're from New Orleans, and we have these organizations called, what do we call them? I mean, not the crews, but the societies, right?
Mm.
It's just natural to your roots to have this instinct to want to care for people around you. And so you're just extending something that's very natural to anybody from New Orleans. And it was based on compassion. And sure, back then it was about, burying people or getting money to people to pay their bills. I mean, there were a variety of things that these societies did a long time ago. But this is an extension of who you are. It's just in your DNA to have compassion. And when you had the opportunity to actually form a corporation that's based on empathy, the inspiration for the name had been embedded in you a long time ago.
Okay.
So, so, so we can take a break, or we can continue to run through the questions. Let's run through the questions and see if we hit a rhythm.
Okay.
Okay. So, Karen, I'll go back to the first question.
Why don't you go to the second?
Okay. All right. You recently launched the company's signature product, Caregiver Family Leave. How does this concept address the broken caregiving system?
The concept addresses the broken caregiver system by providing workers who are working in companies that are not afforded the paid leave option, the opportunity to stop the bleeding with wage loss when they're acting in a compassionate way to do what's natural, and that's taking care of family members.
If you had just cut to the chase and said it stops the bleeding for workers who don't get paid usually for caregiving, they will get paid at least 80% with this insurance product. So I love think about those kind of metaphors. It stops the bleeding. That's something people are going to remember. So if you can even start to stockpile those, it will help a lot. What do you think, Audrey?
I agree.
So one other question. I kind of started off repeating the question to kind of formulate what I want to say. Should I not repeat any portion of the question and just jump in?
It's a good technique if you're trying to buy time, which you were trying to do as you formulate, but it also eats up time. So it costs you on the back end, but it is an acceptable technique to do what you were trying to do, which is, kind of gather your thoughts, figure out what you want to say. So yes and no. I mean, if that's,
But Kyshun, I think what's interesting is that, so it's your product, the product.
Right.
You know why you created it. You know the origin of the idea, right?
Right.
So in your heart, you already know the facts. Now it's just presenting those facts to people so that they'll go, whoa, I need to check to see if I can get that. How can I get that? You mean
Right.
I can stay home and take care of my sick parent or child and get 80% of my salary? How does that happen?
Right.
You know? But I
Oh,
like Karen's idea of, just say it stops the bleeding, because you also have to be somewhat entertaining,
yeah.
right? So your
Okay.
voice has to have life to it.
Okay.
Okay. You look very solemn when you're answering questions. And what you want to be is engaging. See that smile? It stops the bleeding.
Yeah.
Simple. It stops the bleeding. Right?
Okay.
Okay. So you've got to be animated, because people are not just hearing what you have to say, but they're also feeling what you have to say.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll ask the question again. You recently launched the company's signature product, Caregiver Family Leave. How does the concept address the broken caregiving system?
It stops the bleeding. It
Look at the
provides.
camera.
It stops the bleeding. It stops the bleeding, and it provides workers with 80% replacement income in the event they have to stay home and take care of a parent. So it's really important because most workers in the U.S. are not afforded paid leave from work.
Look at the camera.
Okay.
Don't look down at me. Don't look down at me. I'm looking at you. Okay. Karen, I think you got closer to the answer.
That was much better. It was tight.
Yeah.
It was light.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could
Okay.
remember that, that was good.
Well, he'll be able to remember it. You should probably maybe think about having this transcribed, and then the answers will be there. But anyway, okay, here we go. Dr. Webster, who's eligible for caregiver family leave?
People who are eligible are normally those who've worked at a company for at least 1,000. Well, let me start again. This is
Deep
something I have
breath.
to think about because I'm trying to make it sound easy without being too technical. So a worker who's been on a job for at least a year is a worker that's been on a job for at least a year and works at a company that has 50 or more employees is eligible for the benefit. That's the canned answer.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Karen,
good.
how'd you?
I thought that was good. It was straight to the point.
Okay.
All right. And as I was looking at the questions, one question I would naturally ask would be, what's the cost to the employer?
So we've set this up to have various options where conscious employers can opt to pay all of the benefit, a portion of the benefit, or it could be made accessible to employees as a voluntary benefit. So depending on the conscious level of the corporation, those options are available, and the end goal is to make the benefit available and affordable to everyday working class people.
But if they chose the voluntary option, that means that they're absorbing the cost, the individual employee, correct?
Yeah, the individual employee.
And what's the cost to the individual employee if I'm paying it myself?
Yeah, that was my next question. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The end of it. So our plan, you said to the individual employee.
Employee. If I'm paying myself.
Okay, it's as cheap as $1.40 a month. That's how much. As cheap as, but it really depends on the level that you buy in. And it's kind of, we try to stray away from talking about like cost of insurance and making verbal statements about it because they really have a lot of variable.
Yeah, on state,
yeah,
right?
to get us in trouble. Yeah.
Right. So, I would say something like, as you know, insurance has variables. But I wouldn't say like as cheap as $1.40. I would say that it is unbelievably affordable or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say something like that doesn't put you in a bind through regulatory concerns and what have you. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah, keep it.
But it's a natural question. I was like, well, I wonder if I can get it. If so, how much is it going to cost? And if you're self-employed, that's the other thing. What if you're self-employed? That's that's another question I had. Okay. Karen, how did you feel about that answer?
I know that it's venturing into uncomfortable territory because of
Mhm.
regulatory policies that vary from state to state.
Mhm.
So, but you don't want to appear that you're dodging it. So
Right.
I think Audrey's suggestion about the language is probably where you want to go. It's incredibly affordable, or check out our website, or give our folks a call, or just something that kind of veers away from a specific dollar amount.
Right. Actually, when somebody asks that question, that's a perfect place for you to mention the website.
Yes. Okay.
That's a perfect place for you to mention that.
Okay.
Sit back, please. It's interesting. You tend to, as you get anxious, you tend to lean in. You might sit up and back in the chair. There you go. Okay. All right. Okay. Next question. So I understand, Dr. Webster, that the caregiver family leave has launched in 13 states. Why just 13?
Right now, we have filed in 13 states with the intention of covering the United States. The filing period with new products and the Department of Insurance vary from state to state, but it's our goal to be in all 50 states by the year end.
Karen?
I'm wondering how you chose. First, Audrey, you skipped number 4, so let's go back to that. But I'm wondering.
I did? Oh, I sure did. I'm sorry. I sure did. I sure did. Sorry.
If I'm in the audience, I'm still kind of left wondering why those specific 13 states. And then you could say, you could hone in on that to say, well, Louisiana's on the list. I'm from New Orleans. This is my home state, and it's important for me to introduce this where I live to the people, to my neighbors and my family first.
But, and he should also mention the other 12 states, don't you think?
I don't think so for these interviews. Well, one of them is national, one of them is local. So I don't think it's important for the local interviews, unless you're honing in. When I say local, I mean Louisiana and New Orleans.
Right.
To hone in on why Louisiana. The other 12 states only become important to name them to me individually if you're talking to a national audience. But
well, so for instance, in the case of the podcast that he's doing tomorrow, that guy probably has more of a national audience. And if he and his listeners or subscribers to the podcast probably, are executives who might be in those states where it's just launched and might be interested in the product.
In that case, you might want to have a cheat sheet. Do you remember all that?
No.
You might want to have a cheat sheet. I mean, I have them. I know you have them as well, but I can just send them over to you.
Yeah, I have them. Someone had just asked me about that last night, and I printed it out, so I do have them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, if nobody's, if you're not on camera, Kyshun, you can have all kinds of notes in front of you. If it's just an audio interview and nobody sees you, you can have notes available to you. It's just with video, you have to be, with television interviews or.
Well, even in television, you can do it. You just have to be intentional when you do it in television and say something like, let me check, let me get my cheat sheet, or let me look at my notes here. So you have to bring the audience with you. You can't pretend like you're not trying to find something or look at something. You look at your notes and you let them know you're looking at your notes.
Yeah, okay.
Kyshun, you're not having fun.
Let me look at my notes. Karen, I'm glad you asked.
There you go.
That's the right answer.
And pick it up deliberately. She makes a very good point. Pick it up deliberately.
So.
Okay, so do you want me to go back to the question that I skipped, Karen? I'm sorry. Okay. Your company is partnering with Nationwide. Why do you think that Fortune 500, why do you think that Fortune 500 brand embraced your idea?
Well, I believe that Nationwide is a very progressive company and understood the value of this 21st century product and just the new risk that's emerged in today's society with working families, with the booming uh, population that we see, the boomers getting older, and just believe that the product is timely and it's one of a kind. So we are proud to be partnered with them and believe that the product meets a huge unmet need.
Karen?
Uh,
I would have liked to have heard Nationwide recognizes and embraced.
Okay.
Well, I like the answer because you came across sincere. It still lacked emotion to me, and I don't know how you get emotional about, an insurance company like Nationwide. But what does it say about your product and the timeliness of it? And I mean, you hinted at that, but if you were, if you so your audience, you do have an audience that is listening and watching you, and it's your job, as Audrey said, to engage them. So Nationwide, we hear their commercials. Nationwide is on your
Is
side,
on your side.
right? So we got that platform to kind of stand by. Well, Nationwide was on my side this time, on the side of compassion, on the side
Like that.
of corporate policies that, you know, uh, affect people's lives and their income and their ability to care for their loved ones in a worry-free um, condition because they can still pay their bills. And I applaud Nationwide for doing this. I mean, I guess what I want you to do is bring more feeling into
Okay.
this.
I like that. We'll play on the Nationwide is on our side.
Okay, so do you want to give it another try?
Come back to it. Surprise.
Okay, all right. Okay. When will companies in other parts of the country be able to provide this employment benefit to their workers?
As soon as it's filed and accepted by the local Department of Insurance, that process could be anywhere between the next 90 days to a year. But we are working with those departments of insurance to get it approved in as many states as possible.
And
Stop looking at me, Kyshun.
Okay.
that's just straightforward and good enough. I don't, I don't see any reason to give feeling about that answer.
Okay. All right. Good job, Kyshun.
Okay.
As an African-American businessman, how is your company affected by the social and racial turmoil involving COVID-19 and police misconduct?
Whew, that's a loaded question.
You got to be real careful if somebody brings it up too.
What was that?
You got to be real careful not to come across as militant, radical, angry. Those emotions have to be in check for this. I mean, you're still a human being, and yeah, you're a Black man with 3 Black sons. So you have a perspective that's unique, but that's what we have to find, is that unique perspective that is the exact right answer now.
Yeah. So read that question one more time for me.
All right. Okay. While you look at the camera.
Okay.
Thank you. As an African-American businessman, how is your company affected by the social and racial turmoil involving COVID-19 and police misconduct?
Well, my company is impacted in a way that it makes us want to move and push harder and faster to get the product to market, because a lot of people who have been impacted disproportionately are people who look like me. And those who are hurting the most financially are people that look like me. So we believe the product is timely and is appropriate for the time and could be a saving grace for those who are disproportionately impacted by COVID and just the challenges that we see with pandemic and pandemonium in our society.
So would you say that this is a product just for Black and brown people?
No, I didn't. I didn't mean to say that. Let me. Is that how it came across?
I was just thinking like somebody who's not like us.
Okay. So, all right. So, how would we answer that question? I mean, that was what came up as a emotional response to it.
So you have a perspective that is shaped by where you live. So many of the people who are affected by COVID and the double whammy of lost income due to caregiving are in those low wage positions. New Orleans is full of them. They're hotel workers, they're maids, they're waiters, they're people who fast food don't, food service, food industry service people. They're people at the lower rung of the economic ladder. And how has COVID-19 affected them as you've witnessed it? You know, they become kind of a microcosm of this thing to me. Police misconduct is going to be going to be very hard for you to respond to, except to say that you want to be on the right side of morality and history, those kind of answers. So you've come up with a product that helps corporate America sort of figure out this big issue of on the broken caregiving side, and you want to be on the right side of morality and history involving these other systemic reforms. You know, maybe you lean into your history a little bit about being a trained social scientist, and you look at things through that lens. You got to stay safe because you are in a world, let's where you don't want to turn white people off.
Correct.
But you also can't deny who you are. I mean, so not an easy answer, maybe something that we want to really think about and work on. But I think you have a few angles that you can respond to these kind of questions through or align with. You know, as a social scientist, how do you see this pandemic and pandemonium against the backdrop of what you're trying to do?
Karen, you know what? I think maybe we should, I'm just thinking about as I'm listening to you, we should put in the intro that he's a social scientist, right? That gives credibility to the concept and to his perspective. So I think we need to put that right off the bat. If he doesn't mention it early on, then let the interviewer anchor
but I
say
think,
it in the intro.
Yeah, I think it's important for him to establish it, you know, because it is part of his credentials, his expertise, his credibility. So when you get to these kinds of questions, you should lean into that, your training as a social scientist. Do you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I could say it. I might forget to.
No, you can't forget to say it because it qualifies you.
Well, all of that, though, brought you to this point. The social scientist in you returned to New Orleans and assessed that the city was in a mess, particularly the youth. The social scientists came up with programs that helped at least the youth demographic to have some support services and things to do. So the social scientist in you saw your colleagues collapsing from stress. And, you know, I mean, all of this is the result of that social science innate thing in you that has been there since you were a little boy that you have now cultivated, and it has matured. And you see things through the eyes of a social scientist that allows you to then manifest in ways that other people wouldn't think about. That's what Compassion Society, that was the seed for Compassion Society benefits, which then gave birth to Caregiver Family Leave. Now that's not your answer. That's kind of, you know, commentary and soapbox from me. But I just would like for you to remember that and lean into it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Do you want me to ask the question again, Karen, or do you want him to think about it?
He wants to think about kind of
Okay.
let some of this percolate in his brain. So let's just move on to the next question.
Okay. Dr. Webster, what do you think of the call for a corporate attitude change by people like Melinda Gates and Jamie Dimon?
I think voices like Melinda Gates is important, and we need more CEOs and high profile individuals that have influence to use their platform to encourage corporations to do the right thing and help people meet and address their caregiving needs.
You do know that Jamie Dimon, when he was interviewed by the Congresswoman, failed miserably in his response.
What did he say?
He's tone deaf. He thinks everybody's rich. He suggested that his employees start to save money when they're not paying them anything. But anyway,
So it's just lip service to him. He's not.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. I mean, he called for it, but who cares? He ain't doing nothing. So I think instead of the Melinda Gates and Jamie Dimon, there are a lot of folks who have mixed feelings about both of them and the contributions that they say they'd like to make and the changes that they'd like to see happen. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're both incredibly wealthy. But when it comes to the call for a corporate attitude change, why can't you make that more generalized, Karen?
And we could.
Yeah. I just think you get into hot water when you use Melinda Gates and Jamie Dimon.
Jamie is JP Morgan Chase, right?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
But he's the one who they hooked, or the Business Insider report hooked the term better capitalism on, and saying that they have to become more sensitive to workers as real people who have children and elderly parents. And
yeah, and I think he did that after he failed miserably in that congressional hearing.
Okay.
It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. I mean, yeah, yeah. I don't know that I would ask that particular question.
That's not good company to place him in, because that was the idea, to elevate Kyshun and his brand and associate it with other powerful people who are basically who have a similar message.
Right, but is this like, okay, so is it like, and I'm going to be very extreme, a poor man against billionaires? You know what I'm saying? In the scheme of things, you have an African-American businessman who has a great idea and who needs corporations to buy into the idea of being more compassionate by offering their workers compassionate leave, basically, to care for a family member and still get 80% of their salary. It's going to cost these corporations something, and corporations historically they don't even want to pay for your health insurance, right?
Right.
So it's almost like David and Goliath. So it seems to me that maybe he could make the point that, look, this is a this is an idea whose time has come.
Mm-hmm.
People are losing their health insurance, they're losing their livelihood, and they're having to care for their elders, they're having to care for sick children, all while trying to work. A sick partner. All it takes in this world is for one person to lose their employment status, for them to lose everything. They can't pay their mortgage. They no longer have health care. Right? So I think to make those points, especially during this time, because there are so many people who are losing their health insurance and their jobs. Just a thought.
Yeah. No, those are good points.
Yeah. So you think he needs to lean in more on the COVID situation and how that's crippling people? And
Yeah, not only how it's crippling people, but how important it is that we have systems in place that support the people who serve this country every single day, whether you are a nurse or a doctor or a waiter or a cook or a maid, whatever job it is you do. All of a sudden, you've lost the opportunity to perform that job because of a pandemic, not because of anything you did to lose your job.
because you
But
had
where's
a spouse, a child, or an elderly parent, you
yes,
lost your wages and then lost everything.
yes,
So
and
that's
it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. Landlords are going to start evicting renters. People are going to have trouble paying their mortgage. Their credit history is going to be shot, all because they lost their job. Because the employer, the corporation, quite honestly, decided that they would take the opportunity to take the money given to them by the government to cut back and save money and reinvest in themselves while setting workers aside. That's what's going on. But how do you say that in a more positive way as a reason that this product is needed in the market at this time, and that employers really need to take a look at how they can better support their employees? Just a thought.
Okay. No, this is all helpful. It's, helping me to think and process some of the language I could borrow
Mm-hmm.
from to kind of talk about it in a different way.